All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Mario. And the topic of today's talk is cross-site scripting is dead. We just don't get it. Or we just don't want to get it. But it's dead. And I want to show you how. So my name is Mario. I have a doctorate in XSS, which is weird, but that exists. And I created a penetration testing firm in Berlin, and we're a couple of people who just basically do penetration tests and code audits and a little bit of security consulting. But that's pretty much all we do. And I maintain a couple of open source projects, one of them being DOM Purify. I was supposed to talk about this one, but then I decided to talk about something else, which is XSS's Diet. You can reach out to me via Twitter. I don't use it too much anymore, and you can send me emails if you have questions about the talk, and we're not going to be able to have time for questions afterwards. Let's see. I have no idea how long this talk is going to be. I never practiced it. The slides are super fresh. Could be half an hour. Could be 90 minutes, sorry. We'll see. Let's get started. So first I would like to know who's actually here. Usually I categorize the audience of my talks into 4 groups. I know it's not enough, but that's usually the overwhelming percentages. So who here is a penetration tester? There's a couple of people, that's good. Who here is a developer or a web application defender, doing good for the web application? Excellent, wow, that's amazing. Who here is an ISO or CISO or something C-level? It's just one person. That's a girl. Who here is a bug bounty hunter? Interesting, interesting. Thank you very much. That helps me a little bit to kind of target the talk a bit better. So, the talk is structured into 4 acts. The first act would be onboarding. I'm going to talk about what this whole thing is about and why I'm actually standing here and believe to have a message. The second one would be a historic overview to understand where we actually at, to get everybody on the same page. Then I would like to formulate a problem statement, and last but not least, I would kind of propose solutions, or at least give room for discussions, and maybe give us the chance to find solutions later on in a dialogue. Let's start with the onboarding. So we're going to talk about cross-site scripting, and I would like to talk to you about what is cross-site scripting. Who knows what cross-site scripting is? Probably everybody here in this room, right? Is this like a cross-site scripting attack vector? Is this one? Would you say it's a cross-site would you say this is a cross-site scripting attack vector? Raise your hand, please. You're skeptical, right? Of course it's not. That's not a cross-site scripting attack vector. We just call it XSS because it's so handy, but this is not cross-site scripting. Cross-site scripting means when one site scripts another. So we're getting the name wrong, and that's kind of catastrophic because we give something a name that it isn't, and maybe that contributes to us not being able to solve the problem as such. Cross-site scripting means something scripts something else across sites, across domains. This is a script injection. But anyway, let's call it XSS because that's fine for now. We don't want to kind of extend on that. I believe there's at least 4 kinds of cross-site scripting. We don't have to kind of squeeze it into this drawers, but I think there's 4 kinds that we can talk about. There's reflected cross-site scripting, change something in the URL and then it shows somewhere. There's persistent cross-site scripting. You send something, it gets stored, and then it echoes or reflects. There's DOM-based cross-site scripting that is happening entirely in the browser, and there's mutation-based cross-site scripting where the server thinks that everything is fine, and the human eye would also think that everything is fine, but then the browser transforms it or library transforms it, and then pop goes the dynamite or the alert in most situations. So of course, sort of debatable if we need these categories, but they helped us so far to kind of tell our clients what is actually going on and also kind of weigh the severity a little bit. To be able to kind of talk about cross-site scripting and have like a small historic overview, I would like to define a new timeline. And I would like to go back into the year 1999, when cross-site scripting pretty much was not invented, but called as such for the first time. And I want to call it the year 0AX, the year 0 after XSS. That's an XSS miracle. And we want to talk about how it all came together, who found it, who named it, and what happened then. So we're entering Act 2 right now, the historic overview. In the year 1999, or in the year 0AX, it has it that there was 3 kings called Host, Scheme, and Port who came and visited baby Brendan Ike, who was born in an iframe. That doesn't make any sense. That didn't really happen. It's not accurate, but sort of something like that occurred. And it was Microsoft who actually coined the term cross-site scripting. They called it like this in a blog post back then. There was a couple of options that they had and that they discussed internally and also publicly. Like, how should we call it? Like, someone's putting something markup-ish into my pages and I don't want that. How should we call it? Should we call it unauthorized site scripting? I kind of like this one. Should we call it unofficial site scripting? That doesn't make any sense. Should we call it Euro parameter script insertion? That kind of limits it to the URL. It can come from other sources. Should we call it cross-site scripting? Look, they didn't have the dash back then. Now we have a dash, which is much better. They also try to call it synthesized scripting. I don't get this one. And last but not least, fraudulent scripting. I kind of like this one. It's like easy and fluffy. It goes easy off the tongue, and it's kind of closest to what cross-site scripting, or what we call cross-site scripting, actually is. But they agreed on the term cross-site scripting. Then they realized, oh, that's cool, CSS. Wait a second, we have that already. Ah, damn it. Let's call it XSS, whatever, cross-X. That also makes sense. So this collision was easily resolved. Soon after Microsoft blogged about this, and there was a consensus about the name, there was a CERT advisory. And the CERT advisory is pretty much producing text that is so timeless because it's still accurate. 20 years after, this is still absolutely accurate what they wrote back then. A website may inadvertently include malicious HTML text or script in a dynamically generated web page based on unvalidated user input from untrustworthy sources. Exactly, that's it. That's cross-site scripting right there. Even today. This can be a problem when a web server does not adequately ensure the generated pages are appropriate, and so on and so on. You can read yourself. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is they got it right on day one, in year zero. That was awesome. That all still holds. That's XSS today. Still, we didn't manage to fix it, which is strange, right? It's still around. It was fun because back then, the stack of web applications and such, the security needs, were like so slim and so small that there was like even the possibility for interdisciplinary expertise. So Lincoln Steen, a human genome researcher at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, he just on the side wrote a book about web security. Like that was possible back then. You can't do this today anymore. And he said cross-site scripting allows a bad guy to trick an innocent guy into running code the bad guy wrote. Again, that's sort of accurate. But well, back then it was possible to kind of be a human genome researcher and an XSS expert, so I don't think this is possible today anymore. Anyway, times are changing. Then there was my most beloved community, the PHP community. They are just the best. 30 years ago, Jake McMahon at hotmail.com. Is he here? Are you here, Jake? No, would have been fun. He commented on the documentation for HTML entities, one of the most popularly used methods and functions for mitigating XSS through encoding. He says, this function is particularly useful against XSS, cross-site scripting, even 3 dashes, because why not? XSS makes use of holes in code, whether it be in JavaScript or PHP. Right. XSS often, if not always, uses HTML entities to do its evil deeds. What? That makes no sense at all. So this function in cooperation with your scripts, particularly search or submitting scripts, is a very useful tool in combating hacksaws. This is how serious people were back then, 13 years ago, if not always. I love it. So you can kind of see people didn't really take this whole thing serious. It's just like, yeah, let's fix something. Let's not understand the problem. Let's just like fix something here, left and right. Maybe kind of accidentally fix the whole thing as well. And this doesn't work. However, this already gave us tools. And this is the first set of tools that we have, and that is content transformation. We expect something from the user, and we want to transform it to make sure that it doesn't do any harm. So we can escape things before processing them, and we can encode things before echoing them or putting them out somewhere else. We transform content. We turn malicious content or potentially malicious content into something that is not malicious anymore, that is diffused. Simple fix for technically a simple bug, and we could assume that the case is closed, but no. In the year 2002, with the release of Microsoft Internet Explorer Service Pack 2, there was a new security feature being introduced, and that was HTTP-only cookies. Now, the evil attacker can no longer steal the cookies of the poor victim. Is now cross-site scripting defeated? Not really. Do HTTP-only cookies really make sense? When you think about this, not really. Does it really help? Is it like a reasonable addition to the set of security tools that we should recommend to clients? I mean, we recommend them all the time. Every single pen test report at some point says, like, you didn't have HTTP-only cookies, you have to set them. But do we even think about what they do? Like, who can tell me here what the reason is for HTTP-only cookies? Where do they really make sense? Because if I have a cross-site scripting on my website, I can do so many things. I don't want to have the user's cookies. I don't want to have the user session. I can do so much more without the user's cookies. Why patch this one thing? I don't really know. It was some idea, someone came up with it, and it doesn't really make too much sense. I think the only scenario where HTTP only makes sense if you don't have any CSRF capabilities, if you don't have any phishing capabilities or any UI spoofing capabilities, and you probably have only but a cross-site scripting on a subdomain, and you want to make sure that those scripts can't access the cookies or overwrite the cookies or stuff the cookies on the main domain that you want to protect. Other than that, I don't see much sense in HTTP-only cookies. But we have to say Microsoft introduced them first in IE6, and as we can clearly see, Microsoft IE6, especially in Service Pack 2, is much more secure than modern Chrome. I mean, that's, of course, everybody knows that. It's not new. Anyway, let's talk about trust, because apparently, are you waving? Yeah, it is. Like I said, they don't make much sense. There's very few scenarios, and we recommend them without even knowing what the scenario is in most situations. Anyway, so encoding doesn't do it, and escaping doesn't do it either. So let's add trust. And it was again Microsoft defining what trust could mean and offering implementations for that, because they created a feature that was called restricted iframes. Ladies and gentlemen, that was awesome, because that was the first sandbox iframes before sandbox iframes even existed. Microsoft gave us a possibility to use an iframe and apply it with a security attribute, and that would say restricted, and then that stuff that we frame on our page runs without any scripting. It's running in the non-scripted site zone, in the untrusted site zone where nothing can happen. So they said, like, we can't really do anything with encoding. Sometimes we don't really know where the content is coming from. So let's define whom we can trust and whom we cannot trust, and they did that. So we have another tool. We have content transformation to escape and to encode. And we have content restriction to define who and what can do what and where, which is, of course, getting more complicated. We're adding complexity here. But still, we have a second tool to defeat cross-site scripting. So we have worms. It says here, Igitt Würmer, which is German, and we basically say this when we find worms somewhere. It's like, Igitt Würmer, that's not nice. And people quickly figured out that with cross-site scripting, you can indeed create worms, or wormable attacks, like attacks that kind of propagate themselves. Because a cross-site scripting, once carried out and properly exploited, can do pretty much anything in the DOM that you as a user can do as well. It can emit clicks and keystrokes and mouse overs, events, anything, can read anything, and it's actually quite fun. You have almost unlimited possibilities. And people figured that out quite quickly, and the first proof of concept and the first actual worms were being created. Not that many, but there was a couple. In the year 3AX, for example, there was a news about the Advogado virus, which apparently was like evil HTML embedded on some shopping pages, and then it kind of spread, and everybody had it, and it was kind of stealing users' accounts and whatnot. Then there was, of course, the Sammy worm. Probably everybody here knows this, by Sammy Kamkar. That poor guy went to jail for that, but no, not really to jail. I think he went to jail for that a little bit, at least. But it was pretty bad, because it brought down MySpace. And there was a nice paper in the year 6 after XSS from Wade Alcorn that basically describes the anatomy of the cross-site scripting virus in the year 2005. That was really, really, really early. And we realized, well, those attacks came together despite encoding and escaping and the possibility to define whom we can trust and we cannot trust. So we needed something else. We needed a different tool. It was the dawn of the sanitizers. Encoding is often too rigid and doesn't do the job. It's just like too blunt. And we need to be able to kind of receive a string of user-controlled HTML and tell the bad apart from the good, remove the bad, leave only the good, and work with the good. And that is exactly what a sanitizer does. You feed it a string, and what comes out is a sanitized string that is allegedly harmless and can be used in whatever context. And there are so many sanitizers, and they're also terrible. This is incredible. One is not terrible. Well, maybe two are not terrible. HTML Purifier is not terrible. It's a very complex tool. I recommend it. It's maintained by Easy Yang, I think, from MIT, or he was studying at MIT, and he did an amazing job with this particular tool. It's written in PHP, but still a very reliable sanitizer. It's complex. It serializes, deserializes, uses XML trees, iterates over all the branches and trees, and leaves notes and whatnot, and then makes decisions. It's really nice. Then there's anti-SAMI. It's not called anti-SAMI anymore. I think now it's called like the OWASP anti-XSS project or something like this, maintained by Mike Samuel. Also pretty good, running on the server. Then there's HTML Lord, which is catastrophic, uses regular expressions, like you do the math, it can't function. Then there's WashHTML or WasHTML, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, that is used for Roundcube. If you look at the code and scroll over the code, you will see the bugs, like there's one, this is disgusting, oh my god, it's horrible. Then there's cases that in a modified version is being used for WordPress. We all know how that worked out. There's safe HTML, sanitized HTML, HTML sanitizer, HTML sanitizer with a dash, HTML sanitizer with a space, HTML rule sanitizer, and last but not least, Google's Kaha, which is not being maintained anymore. You might see that something is missing, which is my own tool, DOM Purify. I don't see myself in this category because we run exclusively in the browser, not on the server. So these are the old school server-side sanitizers. The person maintaining KSS said something very nice on his SourceForge page. It basically says cases is an HTML, XHTML filter written in PHP. It removes all unwanted HTML elements and attributes, and it also does several checks, such precise language, on attribute values. Cases can be used to avoid cross-site scripting. XSS note, I don't have time for cases right now. So it's just like, yeah, it does something, and it also does something else, but I really don't have time for it right now, so better use it for WordPress. Great success story, sorry. So yeah, we have tons of sanitizers. They exist, which is good. All of them had bypasses in the past, even HTML Purifier, and we reported them, they got fixed. We reported bypasses in other sanitizers, and sometimes they were attempted to get fixed and it didn't work out. We needed to report again, and eventually we gave up. And sometimes we reported stuff and it wasn't fixed because the maintainer simply didn't care, and so it's like, nah, I'm dehydrated right now, I can't do it. So again, we see that this problem of cross-site scripting and the solution of sanitization is not really taken seriously. Maybe that kind of gets us closer to the problem, but at least we have a full set of tools now. We have the tool of content transformation, which escapes and encodes. We have the tool of content sanitization that tells apart the bad from the good and leaves only the good. And we have the tool of content restriction that defines who and what can do what and where, which is quite powerful. And technically, these three tools already fix 99% of all cross-site scripting problems. We just have to use them properly. And that is, I think, one of the core problems. But we're not even arriving at the problem statement, so let me not spoil this. Avocado, everyone. Also, academia was quite proud about its accomplishments in researching and publishing about cross-site scripting. And in the year 8 after XSS, there was only but 1,930 papers about cross-site scripting. Very, very helpful. Thank you so much, academia, for contributing this amount of papers that probably nobody ever has read. Anyway, there's, of course, niche cases. Like I mentioned, 99%, but there's, of course, cases that we can't easily cover with those three tools. What about, for example, DOM XSS? That just sucks. The only way to not have DOM XSS is not to have DOM XSS, and that's pretty much the only rule that you can derive here. Or MXSS, where the sanitizer does a good job on the server, but then the browser messes it up by doing internal transformations, optimizations, inner HTML access, and stuff like this. And we realized that for some of the situations, for some niche and fringe cases, the tools that we have here are simply not enough. We have, for example, MIME sniffing XSS. This one's nasty. You kind of control the content of a text file or a JSON file, and you open it in IE, and then it still executes JavaScript despite being text or JSON. That still works in 2018. It's incredible. You can see this in my trainings. It's ridiculous. There's many other problems as well. You can embed cross-site scripting vectors in many different file formats and sometimes tickle the browser in a way that it just executes that. And then our tools are not really helpful because you don't expect script execution from there. I call it script execution in unexpected places because that's what it is. Then there's plugin XSS. The browser can just be that good, but if the plugin comes and says, well, I have like better plans about what to do with user input, then what are you going to do? Then you're screwed. My favorite bug is a couple of years old, and it was basically a bug in Adobe Reader that caused every website to have cross-site scripting whenever they hosted a PDF. And they seriously made a recommendation back then, says like, don't host any PDFs. Really? How about just fixing the bug? It looked like this. You basically would have a path, and you would have the PDF lying around in the web root, and then you would attach whatever parameter, and then you call it JavaScript, and then alert one. It's just like, seriously? So that was bad. And yeah, like the solution was not to delete all the PDFs. Some people did that, but some people didn't, and that was good. So we can see the tools that we have are not enough. Encoding, sanitization are nice, but not always enough. We need stronger tools, we need more granularity, and we, in the end, need the browser to be strong to help after all. And someone, who is not really credited with this, but it was still him, someone came up with a revolutionary idea in the year 5 after XSS. And that was Jarvis Markham, because he created content restriction 0.5. Content restriction 0.5 were an idea to basically say, we need to kind of be able to find what kind of scripts we want to have execute on our page and what kind of scripts we don't want to have execute on our page. And that's quite a challenge. And he laid the first stones, the first cornerstones for content security policy. Because content restrictions was pretty much the prototype thereof, and then they took his concept, they took his idea, they enhanced it a little bit, and what came out was CSP by, I think, Brendan Stern, and then a couple of other people carried the idea on, and what we know today is pretty much the brainchild of Jarvis Markham and Brendan Stern of Mozilla. CSP is great. Really, really great. I'm actually not a fan of CSP because I think this is CSP right here, like this super useful gun with a 1, 2, 3, 4 barrels, because you can shoot a lot, but you're never going to hit anything. It's not going to happen. Because CSP, in my opinion, has far too many goals and it's far too ambitious. From what we can see with our clients and the about 150 to 200 pen tests that we do per year, CSP cannot be anything that we recommend them because it's just simply not compatible with their websites. Most modern real-life websites don't function with CSP. It just doesn't fly. The effort of tweaking the website to be compatible with CSP, and I think some people here in the audience can sing a song about that, at least two that I recognize, is just very, very high. You have to have a lot of budget, a lot of patience, a lot of knowledge, a lot of verification, auditing, and whatnot to be able to put CSP on a high complexity, high traffic website and still have beneficial effects and not just disadvantages. In addition, CSP is easy to do wrong, very easy to do wrong. If you, for example, whitelist one of the wrong CDNs and don't work with pass that Edge doesn't support anyway, well, then it's bypassed anyway, because you just import some library from the CDN that is vulnerable, and then you bypass CSP. We saw this yesterday in one of the trainings, and there's like tons of documentation about that. That actually got us the word shit into a specification, which I consider a life goal achieved, because we created a challenge one day that was called Shit at CSP, and we wanted to see how good people are with bypassing CSP if the CDN is in place. And then the CSP3 specification actually picked up on that challenge, mentioned it in the specification, so it says shit in the specification. I'm kind of proud about this. I called my parents afterwards. Anyway, the result of half-assed CSP is often what we call cargo cult CSP. So you have a CSP that you deploy on your website. Look, for example, at the CSP of Facebook. Not calling names here, but just look at the CSP of Facebook. It's completely useless. It's just like kilobytes of header data that no one needs, that has no purpose at all. I know that you can do it right, but it's extremely hard to get right. And it's expensive to implement. There's like tons of errors that can be made. Browsers are not especially helpful as well because they have bugs and flaws in the implementation. It's inhomogeneously implemented. It's constantly evolving, and it's just like a pain in the ass to use. And one mistake, and all the protection is gone. So probably we need more tools, right? We don't have enough tools yet. We don't have enough power yet. We can, for example, also utilize sandbox iframes. We can utilize separators integrity. We can utilize sub-origins, permission delegation, trusted types, referrer policy, and so many other things. We can just like put more things on the stack and add and add and add. And maybe at some point we have enough complexity, enough power to actually fix and solve cross-site scripting. Maybe. I don't think that we need more, but this is apparently right now the tendency. Everybody needs to some kind of develop the feeling of adding more to the stack, adding more complexity and gaining more power, but no one really uses these tools the right way, and I think this is the core problem. So the tools we have, as mentioned, is content transformation, content sanitization, content restriction, and I have a little add-on here, like a little added line that basically says we need to hope that the trustee is trustable, and that's pretty much CSP right here. If we allow anyone to execute scripts on our domain that is not trustable, for example, a CDN, then the entire protection is gone. So more complexity despite the same amount of tools. And the things that really happen in real life are like this. Content transformation, people just forget to escape into encode. Oh, we just forgot it once. People escape and encode the wrong way. Use, for example, HTML entities in JavaScript context and vice versa. Content sanitization. The sanitizer gets bypassed and then not patched. Or the sanitizer library is outdated or used the wrong way. We see this all the time, forgetting parameters, whitelisting the right, whitelisting the wrong stuff. Sorry, that was me. That was gravity. Whitelisting the wrong stuff, blacklisting the right stuff, and so on. That just like doesn't really work. And content restriction, be it sandbox iframes or CSP or similar technologies, they're just too much work. They're too hard to get right. And one of the complaints that we often hear is just like, yeah, we could use CSP. We thought about this, but then our ads don't work anymore. And well, they make money and security doesn't. So, which is a good point. So let's go over to Act 3, to the problem statement. And I have a good story for you. You're going to love it. So let's try to find out what the actual problem is, because we're not there yet. We know what the situation is right now, but we haven't fully grasped or discussed the problem. It's the year 20AX right now. We have all the research. We have all the tools. We know pretty much all the tricks, almost all the tricks. Like I see my own research, Masado's research, file descriptors research, and we all are pretty much on the same page of saying, like, I think we've seen it all. Like, there's not much left to research. Sometimes there's something here, sometimes there's something there, but this big gold rush of cross-site scripting techniques that we had 5 years ago, that's over. Like, we don't find that many new tricks anymore, which is okay. We also do know the risks. Session stealing, CServe, impersonation, phishing, whatever we can do, we learned already that pretty much with cross-site scripting, the sky is the limit. So we know what XSS is, where it's coming from, how to fight it, we know how to kill it. But we just don't do it. And my question is like, why don't we do this? Why do we not get around actually just like fixing this particular class of bugs? I think there's a variety of reasons. Well, one could be, we just forgot to escape this one time. We promise we're not going to happen again. Or, well, this is a legacy system. We're currently building the new one, and then we merge them together, and everything's going to be great. And the new one's going to be secure, but it's just a couple of weeks, months, years, and so on. We have seen this so many times. Or we can afford to add security right now because we're a startup. Or our custom code that we just wrote ourselves that is hopelessly insecure is at least faster than any other framework. We heard that one too. Or our advertisers and the tracking scripts don't like CSP. We heard that one too. Like engineers complaining that they can't use CSP because the marketing department says no. Or the developer who once wrote this is not in the company anymore. Now he or she's selling used cars and is not interested in this stuff anymore. So we can't really fix it because we can touch the code base. Also happened in the past. And I think that's all kind of not valid because we're developing to become chief excuse officers, and that's the wrong approach. We're really, really, really good with delivering excuses instead of solutions. We can't implement foo because bar. I was dehydrated when writing that code. I felt generally bad. Or we delegate the guilt and the responsibility. Oh, that was the filthy intern who wrote that code, and we don't even know what the name was, so we can't reach out and get any fixes anymore. Or the project lead accepted the risk, or management didn't grant us enough security budget. So we kind of just like move the guilt upwards. It's like, no, we can't do anything. It's them or it's them, but certainly not us. So you could probably agree that the fish rots from the head down, right? So those guys upstairs that kind of take us the ability to actually fix cross-site scripting on our complex websites because this or that or any other reason. And I think that's wrong because I think it's actually all of us, maybe not all of us sitting here, a couple of you are actually quite cool, probably even me myself is part of the problem, but I think it's all of us because we as a community need to get better because we suck with fixing bugs and we suck with fixing attack class. We're great with finding bugs and finding new ways of exploiting bugs, but then we stop. I always see this like as us coming as like rangers with like, you know, these jetpacks, we're flying into the application and then we shoot everything into bits and pieces and then we disappear again, bye-bye, have fun with the repair work. And that's kind of wrong. We need to go further than that. No matter what we do has no effect. Oh, no surprise. And I had this conversation with like a guy in India when I was at Nalcon. It was this year in February, and I was at the bar, I was grabbing a beer, my training was over, and I didn't have a talk, so I was like, yes, I'm free, I can drink now. And I recognized him from an earlier training. He's like, hey dude, how are you? And he's like, yeah, how are you? What are you up to? And it's like, I'm building like a talk right now for LocoMocoSec, and it's about like what is the problem with like fixing XSS and why we can't get around fixing XSS. And he said to me something so interesting because he said to me, look, you know, if we actually got around fixing cross-site scripting, then a lot of people would lose a lot of money. It's like, oh my God, that is so true. That is so accurate because that's a fact. If we actually fix cross-site scripting, then we would notice that in our budget, on our wallets, in our bank accounts, because there's not that much for us to do anymore. So let me ask a provocative question, like who here would suffer financially if all of XSS was fixed all of a sudden? Interesting. At least a couple of hands went up, I like that. So I think we don't really have an intrinsic motivation to solve cross-site scripting. Because like, why would we? It just hurts ourselves. So why would we fix it then? It's bad. And I think we need to kind of be honest with ourselves. Do we really want to fix cross-site scripting? Or do we just want to keep pretending that we do and we want to rather just like, you know, be the jetpack people and shoot everything into bits and pieces? I mean, it's okay. We can just like keep things as they are. We can keep popping alerts for more money and bug bounty and contracting and whatever. That's fine. I'm not blaming this. I'm not judging this. I do this myself. The question is just like, is that maybe part of the problem? Is maybe that the root of the problem? So I'm asking you, do you want to fix XSS or do you want to leave things as they are? Fix it? All right, let's fix it. I want to fix it too. Half of the group wants to fix it, half of the group doesn't, which is fine. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. All right, I was telling myself that I stopped this talk, that I just like leave the stage if it's like more than a half that doesn't want to fix it. But you were lucky, so we can go on. Anyway, let's talk about the final act because we're almost done here. So what do we do now? I think we now have like a clear problem statement, or at least we're like closer to actually defining what the real problem is. It's not technologies. It's not knowledge. It's not tools that we're missing. So we're just not motivated. We just don't want to do this. There's no incentives for us. I don't think we need more tools. I don't think we need another CSP. I don't think we need CSP 4, CSP 5, and so on. I think we should take some time and understand what CSP 1, 2, and 3 actually do. Because does everybody here know the spec by heart and can recommend to their clients what to actually do in fringe case and niche scenarios? It's hard. I don't know the spec by heart. And I don't think we need a CSP 4 right now. We also didn't know R2 or whatever the other proposals are being caused. I don't think we need another layer in the already huge stack. I don't think we need more complexity. I don't think we need to kind of wonder whether we're all going to the right direction right now with what we're doing, what we're researching, what we're trying to accomplish. Someone's already standing, so I expect a question later on. Oh, too bad, too bad. I was anticipating that. Yeah, fair enough. So look at academia, how academia is happening again. It's like 19,500 papers in the year 20 after XSS. Like, holy shit. Like, how does that make any sense? Like, there's nothing wrong with academia, right? At least not in our CompC field. Like, 19,500 papers. Have you read all of them? I didn't. I read maybe 3, and that was good. Anyway, thanks for the contributions. So, Exactly. True. Yeah. Everybody's part of the problem. Not just us, not just me, not just everybody. And that's okay. We just need to realize that. So I think we need to talk about motivation. To do pencils down, not build any more new stuff, not write any more new specs, but understand the one that we have, understand the software that we have, understand the stack that we have, and kind of develop a little bit of motivation to actually fix things that are in our way or that actually put our users at risk. Because it's all about them. Without them, there is no money, there's no cash, there's no visitors, and so on. How about punishment? We should punish developers, right? I mean, we use punishment pretty much all over the place in society for fighting crime, keeping people from speeding, raising our kids. Why not punish developers for their bugs? Just like, with a head you go in the kitty litter, and maybe that works. Who likes that idea? Punishment. I love it. No, probably we shouldn't do that. How about gratification? How about just like praising people for doing something good? Just like praising the developer when they actually fix the bug, like put some candy in the kitty litter and get some bonus systems or give out trophies or badges or awards. The bug bounty pages do that. They give out badges. That seems to work. People love those badges. Ooh, I have 7 bug badges. Whoa, impressive. Bravo, Cado. Or candy for good grades. We do this in real life all the time. So why not reward developers for producing fewer security bugs? True. Might be a conflict of interest, right? It's complex. Generally, sorry? Oh, of course. Yeah. I'm just picking on developers because I like doing that. I'm still like the jetpack person. Kind of. So let's start tracking down who actually introduced a security bug. Like where are the bugs coming from? And who reviewed the code and greenlit it and why? And let's talk to those folks and explain to them what they did wrong. And maybe, for example, think about gratification as like a fix of the month. Or like finding of the month, or just like give those people who actually find security vulnerabilities who are developers themselves, and then even take the dirty work of fixing them and making everything be fine and the tests be green again, give them some praise. Sustainability instead of new complexity. Process scripting fix challenges, never seen any. Breaking stuff, sure, pop the alert, sure. But why not stop the alert for once? Probably it's a bit harder to come up with a scenario that is exciting, but it should be possible. Why don't we optimize, for example, our unit test suites, or function test suite, or regression test suite to kind of optimize for finding cross-site scripting? Why don't we have that? If I Google for something like this, it's really, really hard to find, and nothing that's universally deployable. DOM XSS regression tests using WebDriver, BrowserStack, and all these things, we can do it. We have the tools, we just don't do it right. And if we do it, then we don't have enough spotlight, nobody sees it. Yeah, so let's show them how we, no, wait a second. We're again talking about others. We're again kind of trying to escape into this fallacy that we need to fix others first and then we need to fix ourselves. I think we need to think about ourselves and fix ourselves. Because again, we're thinking about what to do with developers and what to do with management and this and this and that. But let's actually start with ourselves instead. And I think what we need to do, what we really need to do, and this is something that seriously annoys me, we need to stop being fetishists for bugs. We need to stop the bug fetish. Because we keep fetishing the bugs and the vulnerabilities, but not the fix. We fetishize Spectre and Meltdown and all those major issues, but we don't really look at those people who do the dirty work and fix all that stuff. Why do we do this? We keep praising the bug hunters, But we ignore all those in the press and in the media and in the limelight who do the dirty work afterwards. And I think that is wrong. Our entire mindset is pretty much evolving around bugs, not around fixes, not even around security. It's just about the bugs. Is that a good thing to do? I'm not sure. It's enjoyable, I can testify that, but is that the right thing to do? Is that like the goal-oriented way to do it? I'm not really sure. We should maybe think about fixed bounties. NCC did it a while ago, no one really paid attention, and Google does it and did it a while ago, and some people noticed, some people didn't. And this kind of shows me that given that those programs exist, but no one really uses or watches or works with them, that our entire ecosystem, like the whole thing that we're running here, this entire community is bug-centric. Not fix-centric, not security-centric. We call ourselves IT security, but we're all about bugs. That's all that we want. Ask the search engines. I was, for example, trying to find out how many patch programs or patch reward programs there are out there. And I found about 2,070 hits. And then I checked how many bug bounty programs out there. And there was like 431,000 hits. Like, this is quite some ratio. We keep glorifying the finder, but not the fixer. I'm not saying stop glorifying the finder. I say start glorifying both the finder and the fixer. We have interviews on websites with legendary bug bounty hunters. Like, if that's so hard to find a bug. Like, those people are rarely legendary. I myself am not legendary. I'm just like a person who kind of has a certain mindset to find issues, things that other people did wrong. That's all. I'm not a legend. We have media campaigns for bugs to raise awareness with like bad luck and stuff like this. Or what was the recent one? Beep? Who followed that Beep thing? It was awesome. I loved it. We have self-proclaimed evangelists, super hackers, and experts like Brute Logic and Ashar and other people who use other people's research and just publish that as their own, and get praise all the time. And that's wrong. It's a wrong thing. And we foster that kind of culture. We have top lists and halls of fame, award ceremonies, audience with a pope, like whatever we can come up with to praise people who find issues, we do. Can you just like stop doing that, please? Or at least do the other thing as well. Give the fixers some glory too. Because they do the dirty work, not us. We just come with the jetpacks. I don't think we have a working solution yet. And I don't think I can present a working solution right now. I can just kind of annoy you with my statements and maybe trigger some thought and maybe trigger some discussion afterwards and kind of point into the direction that I believe that we see the problem in the wrong way, and hence we can't find a proper solution. Maybe if we do this, we're going to be better. And I think everybody here can contribute to that, and everybody has probably some mini little bit of guilt in this particular thing, including myself, except for Jim. He's, as you can see on the fly, he's cool. But I think we all kind of need to touch our own noses and like, well, it's also our fault. Like, we contribute to that. We make that system as it is. We make the security community as it is. And maybe we as a community, maybe we can start right here to kind of rethink and find a different model and different priorities and actually get stuff done. And I think we should actually start by being honest with ourselves and then being honest with our clients, with our users, whom we pretend to try to protect. We should either say, well, we're going to stick with the old model. I don't want to fix it. I would just want to leave things as they are. I want to keep popping the alert for money, and that's going to be fine. I'm going to do this until I'm 80. Fine, we can do that. I'm not judging here. I'm tempted myself to follow that path. But at least then we shouldn't slow down those who try to actually fix it. And maybe at some point also rethink our business model, because it might not be viable anymore tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Who knows? Like, the time will come at some point. Or we can say, look, we do want to fix it. We want to become a new community that basically says we would want to fix entire attack classes. But then let's get together, see if we got the problem right, and see if we can derive a good solution for the problem. And first of all, use Occam's razor, strip off all the legacy craft that we developed in the past 15 years, identify the actual problem, the actual obstacle, and then also on that way create new post-cross-site scripting security business models, because they certainly exist. We don't have to be bug-centric. We don't have to be bug fetishists anymore. We can make money in other ways as well by actually helping people and doing the good rather than perpetuating the bad. And that's pretty much all that I have. And I hope you're not too annoyed, because some of you probably are, which is okay. That was the intention of this particular talk. But I would say, those of you who actually are interested in making the world a better place, let's get together, let's discuss it, let's slay that dragon, let's go out there and let's do it. And that's all I got. Thank you very much. I think I was well in time, no? Thank you. Yes, there's a question. none anymore for a couple of months, and we waited a couple of months after the last bypass was found, and then we released 1.0. And now we're at 1.05, I think, or 4. So I feel quite confident, but of course I'm biased. I could tell you whatever because I wrote it, so it's a great software. But I have quite a good feeling, and other people have a good feeling as well. And I think if they found bypasses, we would get them, because we usually fix within an hour or two. I could imagine. That's a good question. The question was, what would be the next big thing after cross-site scripting? If we actually manage to slay the dragon, what's going to be the next big thing? I hope not too many issues. I believe probably detailed issues and fringe issues that are relating to specific libraries, something that we experience with AngularJS. And probably it's going to be issues that are easy to fix because they just affect specific versions or specific libraries, and then we have an easier time. XSS is something that spreads out over everything. So I was sitting in the airplane on the inbound flight from Amsterdam to LAX, and I figured out that they, for example, have like an onboard chatting system. So you can harass other people, and I harassed the wife who's sitting over there, and I sent her messages because it was her birthday. And then I found out that you could inject HTML, and then I harassed her even more with HTML messages, and I was like, why can you inject HTML into the onboard system in the airplane? So this is something that is like on a website, in the plane, in your car, in your IDE, in whichever. Like you find XSS everywhere. So it's like too widespread. And I think if we fix this one, then the next generation of problems are more specific, so we're going to have an easier time. Does that sort of answer the question? Cool, thank you. Yeah, and it's complicated. Yes, please. Yes, but it's hard to generalize because usually we come in as external, so we don't have too much of a clue about the internal processes, so we can't really connect the dots and say like, hey, you're doing this and this and this internally, so you look better externally. This is something that we don't know because as penetration testers, and not as someone who goes into the company and stays there for like weeks, we don't have this kind of visibility. We can make educated guesses, but we don't really know, so I'm having a hard time to generate actual stats or to derive anything that is like valuable from that. Why not? All right, any more questions? Yes. I'll double moderate. Everybody, I'll double moderate. Good news. Any more questions? Sure, but that's what we've been trying for 20 years very successfully. The question was basically, if I interpret correctly, can we not just like develop more and more technologies and eventually make like the opening for XSS like so small that we don't have it anymore, or there's just like only niche cases left? That's what you're asking, right? But that's exactly what I'm criticizing with this talk, because we did that, and so far it didn't work so well. Sure, but I think we're exactly on the same page here, because that's also what I'm saying. I'm saying like, don't kind of make things more complex, but like let's understand these things that we have already. I'm not saying we can keep developing things in parallel, but we need to kind of invest our energy somewhere else as well. Because I have the feeling that a large of energy that we invest is misinvested into exclusively focusing on bugs, exclusively focusing on tools, and leaving alone the developers and those people who actually have to deal with those attacks. Does it make sense? Cool, thank you. Any more questions? All right, thank you very much.